Does shaving make hair grow back thicker? There are tons of videos on this topic, but they're either poorly done or straight up lying to you for views. That's why we decided to take matters into our own hands and perform a test. We have two sides, Side A and Side B, each with 25 participants. Side A is the control group where we don't shave anything, and on Side B, we'll shave everyone. This way we can compare the two sides to see if there is any difference. Before diving in, let's chat about why some folks think shaving makes hair grow back thicker. One big reason is that when you shave, you're cutting the hair right at the surface of the skin, which can totally give off this illusion of thicker hair. But here's the kicker. If you take a closer look at that freshly shaved area, you'll see that the new hair isn't actually thicker than the hair that's further away from the skin. It's just a trick of the eye, you know? So yeah, that whole idea is pretty much a myth. It's fascinating how these misconceptions stick around, right? However, this is also not true. If you look closely at a freshly shaved area under a microscope, you can see that the hair follicle is still intact. And in fact, it's easier to target the hair follicle when it's close to the skin than when it's further away. The third reason is because shaving causes irritation to the skin, which leads to thicker hair growth. Now this one has a little bit more truth to it. When you shave, you're essentially creating a small wound. Your body reacts by sending blood and nutrients to the area to help repair the damage, and it promotes thicker and darker hair growth. However, this effect only lasts for a few weeks. Eventually, the hair returns to its original thickness. Shaving doesn't actually change the shape of your face, believe it or not. Some folks swear that a fresh shave gives them this rugged 5 o'clock shadow that amps up their masculinity. Once that hair starts growing back, it's going to look just like it always did. So, if you're worried about your face shape, don't sweat it. Your natural features will shine through no matter what. Now, since we know that shaving does not make hair grow back thicker, we can ask ourselves, what's the purpose of shaving? Well, aside from personal preference, the main reason is convenience. Some people sweat a lot, and having a shaved head or a clean-shaven face can keep them from getting too sweaty. In addition, it can be easier to wash and dry your face or head without hair getting in the way. But now we want to answer the question once and for all. Does shaving make your hair grow back thicker? To do this, we recruited 50 men who had not shaved their heads for at least 3 months. We randomly assigned each participant to either Side A or Side B. For those in Side A, they were instructed to continue growing their hair normally. Those in Side B were told to shave their head every other day until the end of the experiment. At the beginning of the experiment, we took photos of both sides to document their starting hair thickness. Then we waited for 8 weeks and took photos every 2 weeks to monitor any changes. After 8 weeks, we had our answer. Side A and Side B both showed an increase in hair thickness over time. Side B didn't show any significant advantage. Basically, shaving did not make the hair grow back thicker. Now, let's take a closer look at the results. As you can see, the average hair thickness for both groups remained almost identical throughout the entire experiment. Even the standard deviation was very similar, which means that the difference between the two groups was not due to any random factors. So why don't the results match what everyone else is saying? Well, the answer lies in how we perceive thickness. If you look at a shaved area, you'll notice that the newly shaved hair appears thicker, because it hasn't yet grown out and reached its normal thickness. On the other hand, the hair that's further away from the skin looks thinner, because it's been growing for a while and has already reached its normal thickness. This is because when you shave, you remove the thinnest hairs and only the thickest ones remain. So the next time you shave, you'll start with thicker hair, which will appear even thicker after you shave. This creates a cycle where the hair gets thicker and thicker with each shave. However, this is not because the hair follicles are becoming thicker, but because you're continuously removing the thinner hair and only keeping the thicker hair. But what about the people who claim that they grew a beard after shaving for the first time? Well, these people are experiencing something called hypertrichosis. Hypertrichosis is a rare condition where the hair follicles become larger and produce thicker, darker hair. When this happens, it can create the illusion that your hair is growing back thicker. But in reality, it's because the hair follicles themselves are becoming larger. However, this is not caused by shaving. It's caused by genetics or hormones. Some people may experience hypertrichosis during puberty, while others may develop it later in life. Regardless, it's not related to shaving. There is also another reason why some people may think that their hair is growing back thicker. This is known as the new hair growth illusion. This occurs when you haven't shaved in a while and then you decide to shave. When you shave, you will notice that some areas have more hair than others. These are the areas where you have new hair growth. Because these areas are just starting to grow hair, they will appear thicker than the rest of your head. However, this is not because your hair is actually growing back thicker. It's because you're seeing the hair at different stages of growth. We also asked the participants to rate their hair thickness on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the thickest. At the beginning of the experiment, both groups rated their hair thickness similarly. However, after 8 weeks, those in Group B rated their hair as significantly thicker, but this was not reflected in the photos. This shows that people tend to remember how they started rather than how they ended, which is called the peak-end illusion. This illusion causes people to judge experiences based on the most intense part of the experience rather than the whole experience. For example, if you're on a roller coaster, you're more likely to say that it was fun if you focus on the most intense parts rather than the whole ride. Similarly, people in Group B felt that their hair was growing back thicker because they remembered the feeling of shaving their head every other day, rather than how it looked afterwards. Finally, we wanted to see if people would be willing to participate in an experiment testing the effects of shaving on muscle growth. We found that most people were not interested in this experiment, which suggests that they believed that shaving would affect muscle growth. This could be because they had heard some of the reasons mentioned earlier, but the truth is, shaving has no effect on muscle growth. Some people may believe otherwise because when they shave, they notice that their muscles appear more defined. However, this is not because the hair has an effect on muscle growth. Instead, it's because when you shave, you remove the dead skin cells on the top layer of your skin, which makes your muscles appear more defined. So, in conclusion, our experiment shows that shaving does not make your hair grow back thicker. Any perceived increase in thickness is likely due to the removal of thin hairs and the illusion of new hair growth. While some people may believe otherwise, this is usually due to confirmation bias or selective memory. By removing the thin hairs, you create an illusion of thicker hair, but this is only temporary. Eventually, the hair will grow back to its normal thickness. If you want to know how thick your hair really is, you need to wait until it's all grown back. So the next time someone tells you that shaving makes your hair grow back thicker, you can confidently tell them that it's not true. That concludes our study. Thanks for watching.